Good morning, my beloved friends. I'm Katie McQuaige-Lucas, your ministerial intern, and my pronouns are she and hers. It was so bright and sunny yesterday, and today it's a little bit cooler and a little bit overcast, but I know that the sun is shining even behind the clouds, and I am glad today. And I am glad to see all of you today. And the gladness of our coming together is a holy thing, a sacred moment that we create together and share. You are all welcome here this morning, and so come in and sing, come in and rejoice and pray and ponder the mysteries of life and connection. Come in and let us worship together. And now let us light our chalice together.
Good morning. I'm Sally Lieberman, and my pronouns are she and her. Would you join me now as we light the chalice, the symbol of our free faith, and share our chalice lighting words as you know them or as you are learning them? In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek. And as we do each week, would you join me in our children's affirmation that reminds us what it means to be Unitarian Universalists? We are Unitarian Universalists, the Church of open mind, loving heart, and helping hands.
Good morning. Welcome to this week's virtual church service. My name is Charlene Reynolds Santo, and I'm a member of the worship arts team. Today, we gather with the hope of creating a welcoming environment to explore individual spirituality, build a committed and loving community, and to help heal the world. A special welcome to you if you are here for the first time. Please look at our webpage for more information about UUCR. Here you can find details of our church community, how to sign up for the weekly newsletter, along with contact information from Melissa Martin, our new members coordinator, who can answer questions that you would have. If you're watching this service during its initial broadcast at 10 a.m. on April 11th, please join us after the service for fellowship. This is a great way to keep connected and to check in with others within our church community, using small group conversations via Zoom. The link to this Zoom meeting can be found in the weekly UUCR newsletter. Thank you for logging in this morning. We are grateful that you have chosen to be with us here today. And we believe that you belong here. You belong here, maybe just for the next hour, although we hope for longer. You belong here, and we are glad that you have chosen to be with us today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Cunningham, your music director here at UUCR, and we're going to sing an opening hymn this morning that I hope you will find comforting and meditative. It's written by Reverend Mary Gregolia as she was working on a project in a course she was studying about death and dying. And she was trying very hard to write a song. And as she finally finished her work that day, it came to her all of a piece. As many musicians report that songs often come all together. The words are filled with beautiful images. I know this road will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. It's simple to sing. I'd love you to join me. Let's sing it through 3 times. You can listen to me once, try it another time, and we'll sing it very quietly the 3rd time. I'm just wondering if there's going to be lyrics. Maybe not. could put them in the chat. Okay. Maybe lyrics will join as I'm singing. We'll see. Okay. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Good morning again. Our theme for the month is becoming. And this morning we're talking about the becoming of God or the divine. And I want to tell you a little bit about how the Buddhist traditions understands becoming. They use the word interbeing. And it's kind of like the way we talk about the interdependent web, but not quite. And the Buddhist teacher and monk Thich Nhat Hanh describes the idea of interbeing using a piece of paper. And I brought our paper illustration. It's just a notebook. And Thich Nhat Hanh says that if you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there is no rain. Without rain, the trees can't grow. And without trees, we can't make paper. The cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud isn't here, the sheet of paper can't be here either. And so we say they inter-are. And if you look even more deeply, we can see sunshine in the paper. Because without the sunshine, the forest cannot grow. Nothing can grow. Even we can't grow without sunshine. And so we know there's sunshine in this paper, and that the sunshine and the paper inter-are. And if we look even more deeply, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill. And we can see the wheat, because the logger does not exist without his bread. And so the bread is also in this paper. And the logger's father and mother are in this paper. And when we look in this way, we see that without all of these things, the sheet of paper cannot exist. And so in Buddhism, there's no single moment of a creation story. And there's no sense that the world was made and that it will one day end. Things are always coming up and arising out of other things, which are also arising out of other things, and so on. And all of those things are tied together and related to all other things. And so are we.
Good morning, my friends. I'm Reverend Hank Peirce, minister of this church. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Let us start this time of prayer by lighting our community candle. We light it to remember those who are not with us this morning. We light it as we think of our friends whom we see here, knowing there are more friends over on YouTube watching us. And of course, we light it for all those who have passed on to that great mystery that awaits us all. Let's open our hearts in prayer. Eternal Spirit, who dwells in the hearts of those who seek you, if we come to you in joy, may we draw strength from the experience. If we come to you in sorrow, touch us with your great compassion. If we have lost our way and the darkness has overtaken us, may the light of your presence appear before us that we may see our path. If we come to you weak and discouraged and know not where to turn, may we recall the resources that you have given us. Illumine our minds with a vision of the future's promise. This morning we have 2 green cards, 2 prayer requests. The first is for us to keep our dear friend Rosemary Kierstead in your thoughts and prayers. Her sister Miriam Oakley is reaching the end of her life's journey, so we hold Rosemary in our prayers as we also hold her sister Miriam in our prayers as well. And the second is that we think this morning of Reverend Peter Jeffrey, who is one of the deacons at Church of the Good Shepherd down the street. His wife, Kathy Jeffrey, died just this past Sunday. We hold them and their daughter, Andy, in our thoughts and prayers. Thou, be with those today who bear burdens too heavy to be borne alone. In the many ways we may live our lives, enable us to find strength to do our duty. For those who bear the weight of illness, often unknown to others, sustain and uphold. For those who stand at the brink of some momentous decision, bring to them clarity. For those who walk in the shadow of fear, bring wisdom. God of our secret and open quest for meaning and strength, be with us and in us and around us. Let us join together in a moment of silence. Amen, and blessed be.
For a year and a half, UUCR has been donating half of the funds received in the collection plate to a nonprofit organization that shares our UU values. We don't do this because we have more than we need, but because there is so much need. For the month of April, our Share the Plate recipient is Our Climate. In just a minute, you will have an opportunity to listen to Orly Lauren, who is a fellow with Our Climate. She will briefly share the importance of this organization. To make a donation, you can use your bill pay feature from your bank, donate using the UUCR website and clicking the donate button, or using your cell phone and clicking the menu button on the UUCR website and then the donate tab, or you could send a check directly to the church. Now, please listen to Orly and give as generously as you are willing and able to our virtual Share the Plate offering to support the work of Our Climate and the mission of UUCR. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Orly. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a fellow with Our Climate in Massachusetts. And I feel like I've gotten so many cool opportunities to advocate for climate justice through this program. For example, I have represented Our Climate in adult-led spaces, which feels very empowering as a young person. Also, we've built a lot of relationships with people in the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition, which Our Climate is a part of and which Our Climate actually helped to start. Also, we meet with environmental justice partners and bring their ideas into the Green Future Act, which we are advocating for currently. It's a really fun project. Also, I just want to give a brief shout out to The mosaic was a giant whale in front of the State House. It was so, so cool. And this was a symbol of climate justice and state level advocacy. I work side by side with many youth who don't have the financial resources to do this as volunteer work the way I do. And so your financial support helps bring their voices and their energy and their insights into the movement, and that way we all benefit. So thank you so much to the UU Church of Reading for your support.
Today's reading is God Found God by Cynthia, Ryland, and Mala Frazier. It was the weirdest thing. God got all religious on himself. He was looking for something to do. So she went to this church in Boston. One of those churches from the 1800s that like to consider itself old. God really gives a laugh at that. And she was all by herself. And it was quiet. Like you wouldn't believe. And up in the sky went the beautiful rafters. And all around her were beautiful stained glass windows. And everyone was praying. All the people in the pictures, all the statues, all the angels in the room were praying. God knew better than to look at any of the crosses. She was still trying to figure all that out. But she knew that she'd actually found a holy place. So she dropped a coin in the building fund box before she went away.
I love that reading. I love that reading. I hope you liked it too. It comes from a book by Cynthia Ryland called God Went to Beauty School. And each chapter is a different poem imagining how God would do if God lived on earth and did things kind of like we do. The book entertains this notion of God living in the human world. It brings God down from the sky to show maybe what it'd be like with God doing human activities, including watching cable TV, cooking spaghetti, rollerblading, climbing Mount Everest. The poems are short, funny, sweet, each highlighting a different facet of God that is different from what people knew. Sometimes God is male, sometimes God is female, sometimes God is just God, it's genderless. Here's the opening lines to here's the first half actually of the poem, God Went to Beauty School. He went there to learn how to give a good perm, but he ended up just crazy about nails. So he opened up his own shop called Nails by Jim. He called it that because, well, he was afraid to call it Nails by God. He was sure people would think he was being disrespectful and using his own name in vain, and that nobody would tip. I love that book. It is fun, and yes, it makes you think differently about God. And that is what today's sermon is about. It's about getting you to think differently about God, or maybe just think differently about the idea of God. Every once in a while, I need to remind folks that as a Unitarian Universalist minister, I have no stake in whether or not you believe in God or not. Now, that's not to say I don't care. I do care because I want to know who you are. I want to know, I want to understand what makes you tick. I want to know where you are coming from. I want to understand what lens you see the world through. But when I say that I have no stake in whether or not you believe in God, I'm just reminding you that, I don't get a special credit in heaven because you believe in God or not. At least I hope that's not how it works. But what I do want you to know is that as Unitarian Universalists, I hope that you never feel like your religious journey is over. That you went through all that journeying earlier on in your life and you ended up here. And I say that whether you grew up here or grew up in a different faith or grew up with no faith, I want you to realize that the process of journeying and thinking about your religious and spiritual beliefs should never change. It should always be open. You just may change your mind about what you believe about God, about heaven, about the Democratic Party. Whatever you change it to, it is fine. That is what the free and responsible search for truth and meaning means. The Reverend John Haynes Holmes, who was one of the great Unitarian ministers of the early 20th century, said, "When I say God, it's poetry and not theology. The books of the theologians gather dust on my shelves, but the pages of poets are stained with my fingers and blotted with my tears." It's a great quote. I had to sneak it in here. So the idea that it is good for us as Unitarian Universalists to explore the meaning of God, and I'm saying God as just sort of a generic term, right? When I say it's good, I want to share two ideas with you this morning. The first is about where God comes from. And the second is how God interacts with the world. So, where does God come from? On an episode of the national public radio show Hidden Brain, they introduced a psychology professor at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Now, this professor, Professor Sharif, studies religion not from the point of view of faith or spirituality, but from a psychological perspective. And he argues that human societies changed in a fundamental way when they started to grow beyond groups of 150 people. When groups started to get larger than 150 people, God started to show up. Now let me take a moment to clarify what I mean. I'm not saying that God or the Spirit of life wasn't already there presently, but really as soon as humans became self-aware and began to ask questions like, why am I here? And what happens after I die? From that point on, humans started to wrestle with the concept of God, of some sort of power greater than themselves who had an influence on their lives. But let's get back to the idea of why God. Once again, a generic term for anything greater than us. But why did this idea of God show up once groups got larger than 150 people? The answer is that individuals can't really know more than 150 people. Any more than that, having groups larger than 150 people, well, you aren't able to know everybody, so you don't always know what everyone is up to. There might be some people out there trying to cheat the system, as it were. Professor Sharif says, when you start having anonymous strangers in a group, when you start having people whose reputations you're unfamiliar with, what that means is that people can get a free ride on that group. They can cheat the group with impunity. And when you start having large groups of free riders and cheaters in any group, it can't sustain itself. You need a level of cooperation between the people in a group for it to act and to work harmoniously. And as groups grow and trade networks are established, being able so you can trust the other person that you're trading with, well, that becomes another reason why people start to believe in God, start to believe in this concept of God, because all of a sudden, once you know that the other person that you're dealing with is also a God-fearing believer like you are, it is sufficient to act as a cue of trust. Oh, sure, there is that God-fearing part of religion as well, which has been used by those in authority to shape and control populations as well, and has been seen in all religions, from the ancient Mesopotamians to Scientologists. But we're not talking about that today. I want us to think about why the idea of God showed up. And why? Well, it's about trust, but trust and relationships. Two things that I think all of us can understand, especially in this past year. Think of all the people whom you put your trust in this past year. Your family members, people who are in your pod, whether that pod is the church pod that we created or your pod of friends where you all agreed to that you would all quarantine and be in relationship, but you wouldn't go out and interact with other folks. Maybe the person you trusted most this past year was Dr. Fauci. And as much as there were a group of people that you trusted, there were probably also a group of people that you didn't trust and probably still don't trust. And that is because you didn't have a real relationship with them. There were those who you recognized as being part of your tribe by blood, by class, by religion, by race, or by opinion. Because of those things, you felt safe with them and them with you. You were probably also able to influence them, and they were probably able to influence you. Now imagine if God was like that. Imagine that God was as influenced by you as you were by God. That's the basis of something called process theology. a religious concept which is one of many strands in Unitarian Universalist belief. And don't worry about the word theology, which I know means the study of God, but just think about it as meaning process, that this is a process, thought process, understanding of the sacred. The use of relationships is the basis of reality and process theology. Where a Western view of reality is that the world is made up of objects, building blocks, that you can break down into smaller and smaller bits. Think cells and atoms and electrons. Or you can turn them around and start with electrons and going to atoms and cells, and you can start building more and more complex things out of these blocks. It's a very mechanical view of the world. In process thought, the world is based on relationships, right? Reality is based on how all of these different blocks are related to one another. The atom is in relationship to the cell is in relationship to tissue is in relationship to organisms are in relationship to society, and so on and so on. It doesn't reject the idea of building blocks, but it minimizes their importance. What matters is how these blocks are in relationship. Life did not begin on our planet because of all of these separate elements, but because there was chemistry that brought them together and made them interact and relate to one another. Our relationships with the environment and with people around us shape who we are. Relationships created you, and if the foundation of reality is relational, then it is less certain and the past is not quite so powerful, because any new relationship can come in and change the outcome of the future. In process theology, this means that God is not outside of time, unchanged by time. Instead, God is in relationship with people and all living creatures. And all of our experiences become a part of God. And God is changed by those experiences. The future then is in process, and thus we become co-creators with God. There is no predestination. God may be a lure towards the good, but God is not absolute. Process theology tosses out that Platonic ideal that God is the representation of perfection. That idea that what God is the opposite of what people are, right? God is unchanging and people are changing. God is good and we are sometimes good, but never as good as God. And thus God is defined as the opposite to what humans are. And that is what made God God. What does it feel like for you to think about God not in personal terms, but instead being a process, about being a relationship that you are a part of? The Reverend Jill McAllister says that God is the potential for right relationship. I should also say that process theology works without God as well. It removes the lure and a certain centrality, but it's easy to see how reality is unrolling in certain ways and that the future is shaped by relationships. I love this idea that this is all shaped by relationships, because it means that we have some agency in the future. It means that our relationships that we have are really important. It also reminds me a little bit of what of the process that Greg Boyd spoke about here a few weeks ago. Remember, Greg was talking about the process that of Unitarian Universalism, of the Unitarian Universalist Association, to update our principles and purposes, right? because, and the reason we are able to do this is because we come from a covenantal tradition, right? We have a covenant. Each Unitarian Universalist congregation has a covenant that everyone who is in relationship with each other, that they create, they write, and then we all agree to it. And over time, we might have to change those things, right? And that's what Greg was saying, is that we get to update the language of the Unitarian Universalist principles and purposes, making them more relevant, making them anti-racist. All of that is about how our relationships shape the future. How we understand the idea of God shapes the way we see each other, how we see the world, how we understand reality. And with that in mind, let me read to you the second half of the poem, God Went to Beauty School. I think it's a great way to end my sermon. God got really into nails, of course, because he'd always loved hands. Hands were some of the best things he'd ever done. And this way he could just hold on to one and admire those delicate bones just above the knuckles, delicate as bird wings. And after he'd done that a while, he could paint the nails any color he wanted and then say, beautiful, and mean it. Beautiful. Amen.
Thank you, Hank. I'm very happy to share a video that we made a few years ago of the women of the choir singing a beautiful song, Iraqi peace song. And the composer, Lori Tenenhouse, took a traditional Iraqi lullaby and set words both in Arabic and English that are words that hope for peace for everyone in the whole world. And you'll hear the women singing. Radana Crandallmeyer was the soloist, and Rob Craig Coman is playing our djembe. Please enjoy Iraqi peace song.
What I'm sharing with you this morning can be found in the church's newsletter and also in today's worship script. In our congregational life this morning, we want to lift up several ways that you are invited to participate in our congregation together, nurturing and exploring our own individual spirituality, building a committed and loving community, and helping to heal the world. This week we are reminded that being in community with one another is an essential part of our congregational life. Sometimes we need a little extra love, and sometimes we have little extra to give. If you have a little extra love to give, which might look like delivering a meal or sending a card to a fellow congregant, please consider subscribing to our Caring and Sharing Team email list. Many hands make light work, making it possible for us to effectively care for one another in times of need. We currently have just over 5% of the congregation actively participating in this vital ministry, and so we encourage you to become engaged. You'll find the link at the bottom of every church email, or you can reach out to me for more information. If you know of someone in our congregation who could use a little extra love these days, or if you yourself are in need of some support, please do let us know. As you may know, April is Earth Month, and our UUCR Green Sanctuary has put together an Earth Bingo card with suggested activities aimed at building our awareness of environmental issues and building helpful habits in order to be proactive and to live out our values. Most of the activities are family friendly and can be done by folks of all ages. So please take a look for the bingo card and the resources and more information. Let's have fun and encourage our friends and family to join us as we focus on our values to heal the world and honor Mother Earth. This week in our online programming, we want to point towards a few key offerings. On Monday morning, our pastoral care team will host their caring conversations for anyone interested in participating in confidential shared conversations with others. On Monday evening, join fellow congregants for our lay-led social crafty fun, a casual drop-in time for enjoying the company of others, whether you craft or just socialize. There's no requirements or expectations of any kind. This Wednesday, our Liberal ladies invite you to join them for a time of personal reflection as several members share their stories of loss and grief. Our staff-led social groups continue to run every week, Tuesday through Friday, and you can find all of these links in our newsletter. Today, at our social hour after the service, Reverend Hank and the staff will explore new breakout rooms, and I will be hosting a new visitor welcome for anyone who wishes to meet with me. All are welcome. We hope this offers you meaningful ways of learning and deepening our connections together. Thank you for being a vital part of our congregational life.
Thank you, Melissa. There is so much going on. Very exciting. We are going to sing our closing hymn this morning, and it comes to us from 1970s Israel. Bashana Hava is the original Hebrew title to Soon the Day Will Arrive. It's 146 in the hymnal. And it was written based on an ancient Israeli song that composer Nurit, I don't want to get her name right, Nurit Hirsch, had found. And she set lyrics by another Israeli composer, Ehud Monor, to this wonderful song about hope. We've just passed this year's annual observance of Holocaust Remembrance Day this past Thursday, and we are in the middle of a pandemic. And these words that we have sung before in our services may have a special meaning for you as well. So I hope you will sing along with this wonderful, uplifting song of hope. Soon the day will arrive.
Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without one
Hello again, my friends. So as Melissa just mentioned, we are going to try something new at coffee hour. We've been splitting folks up randomly when we got to coffee hour, but today we're going to try to do something a bit more intentional. There is a group of religious education families who are going to be meeting with Sally. There's the group that Melissa has, but I think that's a whole separate little thing. Anyway, you will have a chance to, if you're part of the RE families who've been asked to be part of that program, you can go there. You'll see that. You will also see one that says Sermon Talkback, and that's when you get to talk to me. Or you can stay in the big group, and we've been referring to the big group as Goldfish and Cocoa. That being the two items that our young folks really seem to miss about social hour is Goldfish and Cocoa. So we're calling that, so you can stay in Goldfish and Cocoa or come and chat with me about the sermon. Let's extinguish our chalice as we do each week. If you know the words, repeat them with me. If not, you can just see them, read them there in the chat. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts. And our final words this morning about God come from the author James Joyce, who wrote that God is a shout in the street. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in peace. Amen.